All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back to talk some playoffs. NFL playoffs are here. It's the wild card slate. You can't spell wild card slate without wired and weird. One of those two words, and I'm wired up, ready to get weird. We're going to talk about it today. Lots of different ways we're going to have to do it because it looks like last Saturday when we broke down the two-gamer, whatever it was there, looks very clean cut, very easy to figure out, but we're going to find ways to get different, try and help you get to the top. You guys are just joining us for the first time, do us a favor on the way in, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel. We want to get to 6,000 subscribers. We did a huge giveaway. We gave away a full annual membership to the site, our site most affordable out there when it comes to all sports, everything that we've got with projections, ownership, core reports, slate plans, tools, rankings, etc. If you go check it out right now, SHIPITNation.com, you can use the promo code PGA10 to get yourself 10% off any of those packages. Hoopster, bring you in. I'm excited. The playoffs are here. Big news before we hopped on. I know you're a best ball bro now. So AJ Brown out for Monday, but we will be talking today the two-gamer. Maybe we'll just run through quick thoughts at the end if people want to stick around for the other games, just like bing, 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 hit them all quickly. But we're going to actually dial into this two-game slate today. $1 million up top. What's going on?
Yeah. A couple things right out of the gate. I'm in the playoff best ball streets deep. I'm trying to get to this 150 on drafters. I'll just pull this up real quick because it's about to fill. There's 1,000 spots left, but I did a couple videos this week. If you use that promo code SHIPIT, you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. Then yesterday in the chat, Marley pointed out, actually, it's more than that because if you do the $100, you get $200. And then they have this milestone marker. If you actually do 10 drafts, you get one free draft. So if you deposit the $100, you get $200. If you do all 10 of the drafts, you get a free draft on top of that. So you end up getting 11 drafts for your $100. So it's basically 6 free drafts, which is huge. And again, you're not going to find a deal like this anywhere else in the industry in terms of best ball stuff. So make sure to get on over to drafters. The AJ Brown news, pretty big. He is out. A couple people pointed that out in chat. And then you're gonna have to run that by me one more time, moving a little slow. You said you can't spell wild card weekend without weird and
it's
wired,
a wild
right?
card slate. Wild card slate.
Wild card slate. We're
going to talk about. You can't spell wild card slate without wired or weird. They both are in there.
Gotcha.
You got to do that. We're wired up to talk about it as always.
Yeah.
But as the chat pointed out this morning, you will have to find ways to get unique, weird, different, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the lineup sort of builds itself. We're going to do that. We are going to share the SHIPIT Nation projections. They've been crushing all sports. It was talked about earlier in the chat last weekend with golf. Huge first weekend. We're going to talk some PGA marketing quick. And then because the last week for the promo, we got the setup there for NBA. It's been just dialed in every single night. This week, NHL, bunch of shippers in the streets over there. And then, of course, for NFL, we got it all playoffs long.
Yeah, I mean, I like your point that you kind of talked about earlier. Kind of similar to last week in terms of one game that looks pretty appealing and one game that people might want to avoid, which is crazy because you see Chiefs and Dolphins and you think, let's load up, let's go. But low total, 43 for that game and really, really bad weather. So we'll kind of talk about it. It's kind of crazy. You just look at the slate. Browns, Texans is the game that people want to go to, opposed to Dolphins, Chiefs, which is a pretty interesting dynamic on the slate. The one thing with the Chiefs, it's just hard to know where it's going to go. I mean, if you look at their roster, they have so many wide receivers. That makes it pretty difficult. Mahomes has not looked all that good this year. Kelsey has not looked all that good. And then the Dolphins traveling into this weather situation, and, it's not an appealing spot for them. Relatively low team total. I mean, their team total sitting right around 20. I don't think we've probably seen that all season long. So I think it's an interesting slate. We'll work through it. Prize pools, massive. I mean, massive, like you said.
Yeah, I want to talk about something quickly here. Jeremy brings up. So we opted to do the two major featured slate. Obviously, people like a little day-by-day stuff. The Saturday slate has $1 million up top. The Sunday three-gamer. A good point Jeremy makes. There is a 6-game slate that you can get in starts today. But again, with less information, less news, there is nice prizes out there, but you can combine. We do have it covered with the projections. We've got it covered on the site where you can mix and match all the other stuff and put it together for the stack rankings. They're in there. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can use from the site without having the actual content from Hoop, myself, Title, Ham, Nades, etc., the rest of the team. So you can do that if you want to. And then you kind of gave like an overview there and brought it up. I thought that was good, but just in general, the setup of incentives. Don't forget from last week, Hoop, there is some incentives here this weekend too. If Marquez Valdez-Scantling catches a ball, people won't say he's a piece of shit. So make sure to get Marquez Valdez-Scantling into all your lineups today with that incentive. But you gave the grand scheme overview. It does set up the same. Did you have the quick weather rundown on that second game?
Yeah, I do. And then in terms of people playing the full slate, as you'll see when we pull them up here in a minute, our projections have the projections for the full slate. So I definitely direct you over into that direction. Look at our projections. You'll be able to see everything. In terms of the weather for today, obviously the first game is in a dome, which is ideal conditions for playing football in the middle of January. But that second game, Miami KC, weather is not going to be as appealing. That's why we see this low total sitting at 43. It's going to be very cold. With the wind, it's looking to be in the negatives. The game temperature is going to be about 0 degrees. It's going to be windy, 10 to 15, gusts around 25. Again, cold temperatures are not necessarily indicative of a low scoring game, but when you factor in that there's going to be a little bit of wind, you're taking a team from Miami that's used to playing in 80-degree weather and putting them in 0, and this team has struggled in these situations in the past. That's why we're seeing this lower total. That's why we're seeing the team total for Miami around 20 or even lower. I mean, between 19 and 20, essentially. So really, really cold. We have some wind. And we have a team in KC that's, again, we've talked about all season long with KC. They're good taking these ugly, nasty wins. 2 years ago, no, not so much. They're going to air it out no matter what. They're fine. Like if they can get Pacheco to go out there and 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, and they get the win, they're going to be good with that. And that's why we're seeing this low total in this game.
Yeah, I definitely have some takes for it when we get there. I mean, obviously it's going to set up one way or the other, but I think there's lots of ways that you could do it to get different. Everyone's talking and worried about unique lineups, and it's going to be duped. Obviously, we want to be as unique as possible, but with $1 million up top, if it ends up being an 8 to 10 way chop or something, you're still making out A-okay. That's better than most slates where you're going to see an up top payout. Real quick, the Hoops point on the site under our NFL projections. When you just go to NFL projections, you'll see the last projections update. We've got it for FanDuel and DraftKings. The breakdown on the legend is right there. You can copy the CSV, you can copy them over. You can download the CSV. It's all three days are in there right now, but you can also separate out the days if you want to do that. So if you wanted just today's, you can do it that way and then go from there. If you are a partner, or if you are with our partner, The Solver, if you're not, you can go over here and I'll just show you quickly. Get over to here, go to the DFS optimizer. You can scroll down. You can get it in for whatever you want. One sport for just NFL, all sports. You can save some money. Single sport NFL monthly is just $34.99 a month. So you can look at that, but that's where we're going to be going to look at everything here shortly. But this is where it shows it comes preloaded with all of the SHIPIT Nation player projections, ownership projections for all of the sports we cover. It'll stay that way just so you guys know so that you have it, but that's where you get them at if you want to check it out. Anything else you want to add there, quick, Hoop?
No, yeah, I'm ready to roll, ready to dive into the slate. And, the one thing that we always pride ourselves on is early content. And most of our stuff is up. This is a little bit unique, though, this week because it is weird where we do have pretty substantial injury news. Like at this point, we typically know who's in, who's out. But on the Miami side, we still have Mostert and Jalen Waddle listed as questionable. Maybe we get some news here ahead of time, but there could be some potential opportunity for us to take advantage of that if we don't get the news ahead of time.
Yeah, it should be. I think they'll be in, but we'll see. But we should get the news at some point anyway. And there's ways that you can move around. It should keep their ownership down a little bit. For example, Achane and Mostert, 6,800 and 6,700 on this slate. Achane being the $6,800 guy. So if you started with him and then you get the news and you want to move to Mostert, any Achane lineup can become a Mostert lineup. So little things like that you can keep in mind. And then just lastly, it's over here. But like you said, all of our stuff already up for our content. Projections, ownership are updated, but will be updated at least 1 or 2 more times before lock with more news closer to accurate ownership. And then all the showdown stuff will go up tonight. We've got full coverage for the Miami KC slate as we get their big contests over there as well. If you guys want to just get in, just go to shipitnation.com. go to Join the Nation. The all access, you can get this down to around $62, which is about $2 a day if you use the code PGA10. If you want those PGA options, just a quick note on these, and then we'll get to the slate. These introductory prices do expire on Tuesday. Hoop and I will be doing the show next week for the Amex. It expires on Tuesday. They won't go up too much, 39, 239, nothing like the 500 to 600 that you'll see.
Still half the price of our competitors, even after the deal goes away.
Yeah, when we go up to 39 a month, there's still places charging $39.99 a week. So it's just to note that. But right now, when you use PGA 10, you get 10% off the introductory price of the monthly, and then it renews at 34. When it goes to 39,
got to hit him with the Vince. Got to hit him with the Vince here.
Oh, got to hit him with the Vince. He wants the Vince. Everybody wants the Vince. There you go. You got it.
This is the best way to describe it. We can talk numbers. We can break it down for you. This is the best way to describe it. Oh, check out SHIPIT Nation. Cool. Oh, wait, look at these PGA prices. Wow, the 10% off.
On top of the introductory prices. That's what's going to go away. So the biggest deal right now is the season pass. There's about 39 more events. It works out to about $5 per event. If you take the $199, drop it to $179. But let's hop into this, Hoop. We got everybody antsy in the chat. We want to get to this slate. We are going to talk through with these two games. We'll start just at positions here, right? So we can look at it and see our values are in here. These shows, the SHIPIT Nation projections are in. You'll see it, obviously, Singletary, Pacheco. The ownership is definitely going with these. And stay tuned, Jeremy. Stay tuned, my friend. So keep that in mind. Nico Collins.
Improving add-on. That's what we're all about. Stay tuned for sure.
Yeah, there's lots coming down the pipeline. We'll just keep it rolling. Tyreek, we'll talk about when we get there. Interesting case to be made with him. People are already asking about double tight end. You are seeing a lot of ownership, 40%-ish to these guys that you can find. And then DST is pretty spread out. I think the Chiefs being the most popular. But take me through quarterback first, Hoop. Let's talk about it. Looks like Flacco will be the most popular. Stroud will be up there with him because he's in that same dome game. But Mahomes is still getting some love. And we usually say never Mahomes, but that's on main slates. This is a two-game slate is all we got in front of us here. So talk to me about this quarterback position.
Yeah, so the one that obviously is way, way down there, and let's see, is Tua. I mean, Tua, 7K. It is just a brutal spot for Tua, but he is going to come in much lower owned than these other guys. There's no doubt about it. But, man, this just seems like a really, really bad spot for Tua out of Miami in KC. He's going to be low owned. I'm considering just fading him and just saying it's not going to be him today that you need. And going with the other three. I have not, finalized my teams, but I'm strongly considering just full out fading Tua and making sure I'm overweight on the other three. And that's the easiest way, obviously, to get overweight on your guys. Just make one fade and essentially move on. I mean, Waddle obviously isn't 100%. Clearly has Tyreek. That's very helpful, but man, it could be a real bad look for Tua in Miami here today. Now, the other three, you talked about Mahomes, the never Mahomes stuff. Yeah, that's more on the main slate. It makes sense because you look back, I always like, guys that I typically fade. I like to look back. And who did we talk about this week in golf? It's Hideki Matsuyama when we talked about him on golf. Like, I haven't played him much lately, but I can't think back the last year and a half where I faded him and it really hurt me. Kind of the same thing with Mahomes on the main slate. It's like, man, think back. When have you needed Mahomes recently? And it just has not been the case. But we're talking about a two-game slate here today. And you have 4 quarterback options. The top-scoring quarterback could potentially be 16 or 17 fantasy points. So you need to reevaluate. On the main NFL slate, you're going to need 30 from your quarterback or potentially more. On a slate where high teens could be good enough, you have to consider Mahomes here at 7,100, a little more expensive. And I do think he has a chance to come in number 3 in terms of ownership. I do think people could just say, man, I want Flacco and Stroud in the dome. I'll take those guys. But ultimately, in my eyes, I think at the end of the day, these 3 kind of get spread out. I think most of the ownership goes to Flacco, Mahomes, Stroud, and it's going to be within, I'd say, all of them, 25 to 35%, all 3 of those guys. Man, it's when you look at Flacco, he's a little bit cheaper than these other guys, 6,100. I think he probably does come in the highest owned of the 3, but I don't think it's going to be a huge margin between him and these other 2. CJ Stroud at 68. If you're deciding between a quarterback in that game between Stroud and Flacco, I mean, for me personally, I'll take Stroud over Flacco. I think a lot of people will just take the savings and go to Flacco. But really, for me, at the end of the day, it's going to be exposure to those three guys, Flacco, Mahomes, Stroud, and strongly considering just fading Tua. And again, just hoping that it's not him. I think he is in the worst position of all these quarterbacks on the slate by a pretty wide margin, like a pretty wide margin. I think he is like number 4. So probably looking to fade him and then, get some ownership. Now, the problem with Mahomes, when you do play him, he's the hardest guy to stack, to be honest with you. You obviously know you can play him with Kelsey. There's no doubt about that. But then you get to the wide receivers, you have Rice, and then there's a list of guys that could potentially be the guy you need. So on those Mahomes teams, I kind of want to make sure I get some exposure to a variety of guys. Watson, someone in the chat posted earlier, which was a good point. I didn't see the name. I just read the comment that, our guy Gary, 11 targets for Mecole Hardman last week. And that's very interesting. I think it's something a lot of people are kind of overlooking, but we'll talk about him when we get to wide receiver. But on those Mahomes teams, I want exposure to, some of these guys for sure. So I don't know, I'm looking at those 3 and then potentially fading 2 is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and people keep talking about this guy. Noah Brown was at practice on Thursday. It's Saturday. Like, I expect him to be playing. So if you're waiting on that news, you have to. He is questionable, but I'm saying I'm going to assume that he's in. So if that helps your side, then by all means, great. Hoop, you did a great job breaking it down. I'm going to do my best job of sort of going with that in a second, but I want to answer a couple questions. Obviously, people come to these shows, have questions. We're showing off our projections over on the solver from our site, SHIPIT Nation. So we don't have it right now, but if we did, I can promise you it will not be $300. So keep that in mind.
That's the key part. I'm glad that I was going to hop in and point that out too. I mean, that was essentially a money grab by some in this industry, which was it was disgusting to see that occur like that.
Who gets really disgusted? I don't mind. Like I said, people do whatever they want. It's awesome for us because then they see.
The problem I have is like, people want to trust their content provider and they're going to just blindly pay whatever someone says, which I get. And, we have loyal customers that we could do that to. We choose not to. We choose not to do that. And we're never going to do anything like that. And that's why you see our price tags where they're at. So just be careful out there, man. Don't just blindly trust a content site with whatever they roll out and just give them your money. You have to be very, very cautious with what people are willing to do to make some extra money. And again, that's something we'll never be about, and it's reflected in our price tags.
And that's my point, though. Like, it's a free market. They can do whatever they want. I just think, like you said, I step into the consumer shoes, the community member, whatever it might be, and see what we do. And then it goes with everything. When people say, oh, you guys talk about your site all day on here and do ads, it's like a full ad. Yeah, we're a brand new site competing against some of the best out there, wanting to make a mark, help as many people as possible. And on top of that, these guys are getting in bed with every single company that comes out and throws affiliate money at them. Would you rather me be talking about all these sites that come and go just because I can make affiliate money on it? Or would he talk about actual true partnerships we have, like with the Solver, like with Drafters, companies that are doing great things, and then our own site where we're using it to help people as well. So I'll go back to quarterback for a second. I do want to talk about a couple of things. One, it's like right up your alley, right? You always say, like, people say, oh, you're going to play the chalk guys. But if they're only going to be 50% to 60% combined owned, and you go 50-50 on them, or you go 60-40 on them, Hoop, you're able to get massive leverage on this tournament field by having 60% Flacco and 40% CJ Stroud while everyone tries to make Mahomes and then some sprinkles of Tua work. So you can do that. Like, that would make perfect sense. I think it's a great way for people like, but they're just too chalky. There's a way to do it. Like, you can still get around it that way. The other thing I will say, which will counterbalance almost anything I've ever said, is not just the never Mahomes thing, because we're not on a main slate. Even our guy Tweezy said, he goes, yeah, but that's really just for showdown. It's still for the small slates. But I will say this, the thing about Mahomes that I usually hate is actually what I love for a 2-game slate. Because what's the thing we hate about Mahomes? Very hard to figure out. That means it's going to be unique if you're going to go and mix in these guys like the Watsons, the MVSs, the Hardmans, whoever you might want to mix and match in there, as long as you get action with them. If you go Mahomes lineups, you are going to mix some of those guys in with your stacks, and then that's what could separate you on a slate like this where everybody feels very comfortable, as you'll see, just going with Collins, Cooper, Elijah Moore, or if they're going to the next stage, it's Rashee Rice as your KC guy, or it's the cheaper guys in Houston. So there is lots of ways to get different within those KC stacks that would make them interesting to me. Tua is a really tough ad here. Obviously, if you get a little bit or whatever, that's fine. He's not going to be owned, but he's very easy too. If you're getting him, it's going to be with like your Tyreek lineups where he drags Tua to the finish line. Somebody slips or whatever might end up happening, or it's Waddle ends up playing and it's a check down to him or a guy like Mostert who drags it in. So stuff like that. So I don't see as many ways to get different at the quarterback as I think you do at the other positions. But the one thing about Mahomes is that you can see it in cold weather. We've also seen two things with him in the playoffs and in colder weather. Mahomes does scramble more, right? So you could see like 40 yards on the ground from him. And then there is the what if on a guy like Flacco, who obviously is getting built in by price, but not just price. It's the fact that Cooper, Moore, Njoku, all very easy to pair up. More people on Cleveland D, Chiefs D. Like if you're on that, it all builds towards that when you put Pacheco in. So you can see where a lineup like this, and I'm just going to do it quickly, gets pretty simple to build. You still have almost 6,000 left per spot. That's the chalk shell. It looks very good on paper. I can't deny that this is an awesome looking lineup. I'm just saying you have to know that going in. And if we know that about the field, then how can we counteract that and go against it, right, Hoop? So any extra add you want to have, I tried to add on to quarterback as much as I could, but anything else there, and then anything you see with a shell like that you could see as ways to get different.
I think the easiest way to flip a shell like that is to go Mahomes in the passing attack for the Chiefs. And like you just said, in this cold weather, Mahomes will scramble a little bit, and there is that potential. Again, they have not looked good lately, the Chiefs. They could potentially have the ability just to turn it on come playoff time. They've been here before. They don't care. They don't care what seed they were coming into the playoffs. They've been in these situations before. I think that is a very interesting way to go today. Just totally flip this, because this is what people are going to do. They're going to want to be on the passing side in Cleveland and in that Cleveland-Houston game, and they're going to want to be on Pacheco and the Chiefs defense in that other game. Just flip it around, and you're instantly a little bit different, like you're doing right here. Yep. And again, it's a 2-game slate. All these guys are going to get ownership. Even if you do this, Rashee Rice is going to get ownership, but it's roster construction and how people are building those teams. It's going to be more the passing attack in Cleveland and Houston. It's going to be more running defense on the Chiefs side.
So you see this, I just popped it up. So that original build that I had in there like this was 77, 225. So it was 77 projected points with 225% total ownership. These guys still have ownership, but we are only 2 points light on projection, way less ownership. It drops to 168%, just like that. I mean, you can flip it around however you want to do it and see. And again, it's not price for price, but it's similar enough. 6 instead of 68. It's actually a little less here, but a little more here. It's a little more here for sure, but there's guys that you can find to fill it out. It's just to show that it's not that far off as far as it goes, but it's completely unique in the setup of total ownership versus that. Other things that you can do quickly, and then we'll go to running back, is if you have Flacco, I think a lot of people would have Flacco in Njoku based on how their connection's been lately. I would have no problem just, flipping it to Schultz and doing something like that instead. I think there's guys that you can use. Someone mentioned it earlier. If you go down to like a David Bell, we'll wait on the Cedric Tillman news, but I think David Bell would still fit into this range here. He's not getting much ownership. He might get more than 2%. I could see that going up. But at 3,500, he's a way to get different. His projection's not going to show much right now, but when we get the updates, it could, depending on how things shake out on the injury report. Anything else that you have or any ideas you want to talk about there before we go to running back? If not, you can take us over and start chatting running back.
No, I think that's a great way to kind of talk about it and show some roster construction, some different ideas, and just walk through the lineup building process. And again, people are going to look at that second build and say, oh, well, it's not like super unique or anything. It's a 2-game slate. Nothing is going to be super unique. You're going to have ownership on all your teams, but it's the way people are going about building their teams. Again, you always say it, not who you play, how you play them. When people play these guys, it's going to be correlated in a way that it's going to be passing heavy in Cleveland and Houston and potentially run heavy in that KC game. So I think that's a very important talking point for this 2-game slate. In terms of the running backs here on the slate, I mean, there's just not a ton of options. We have 3 guys, I think, that soak up a majority of the ownership and potentially just get their ownership get spread out. And that's Singletary, Pacheco, and Ford. I think at the end of the day, Pacheco ends up being the highest owned, and there's a clear path to him being the optimal running back. Again, they are going to be totally fine giving him the ball as many times as possible at the goal line, everything. and just getting out of here with a 21-7 win or something like that. And I think that's a very reasonable score. I think they could dominate this game. If they dominate this game, it's going to be Pacheco and the defense. And again, that's why people are building their teams like that. I want a lot of Pacheco today. There's a very clear path to him. And then those other two, Singletary and Jerome Ford, similar price tags. Again, I think they end up getting similar ownership for the most part, playing in that dome. 3 solid options at running back. And then a little more of a muddy situation, I think, in Miami. We have to see. You got A-Chain, and I'm assuming Mostert does play. We don't have that news at this point, but, for me personally, I'm going to have more A-Chain regardless, and the field goal too, because Mostert is still questionable at this point. But if I think Kansas City kind of has their way in this game, it seems like they like using Mostert when they have the lead, A-Chain when they're potentially playing from behind. I think they could be playing from behind. So I want him over Mostert. And then some of these secondary pieces that you can potentially look at, Kareem Hunt, 47. I mean, it's the same thing, though, with these backup running backs. You're just not getting that massive discount, and they got to do something at these price tags because Kareem Hunt is only $800 cheaper than Jerome Ford. He's $1,000 cheaper than Devin Singletary. So going out there and running one in from the 5-yard line probably isn't enough. Edwards-Helaire, 4,800, likely to back up Pacheco. Again, at these price tags, these guys have to do something. It's not like a full punt situation. These backups need to go out there and do something, which makes it pretty difficult. Now, they will be much lower owned. These guys will be in my player pool. But definitely won't be a featured part of what I do. It's a pretty clear-cut position. You have 3 guys that get a majority of the work, Singletary, Pacheco, Ford. You got that Miami situation, which I guess could potentially go either way. And then you have the 2 backups, Kareem Hunt and Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, people are trying to pick it out here if it's going to be HN or if it's going to be Mostert. They actually have the same anytime touchdown prop. I haven't seen any rushing props on them yet or anything like that, just to get an idea there. But if Mostert plays, as I assume he does, I think he's still going to come in lower owned than HN. I think people already got their lineups built up. If they both play, that's the tough part, because a lot of people are building in HN to be able to think about if they want a late swap to Mostert. But at the same time, I don't think as many will. I think I'll just run with it anyway and see what happens. So I don't hate Mostert for that reason. But if you guys look, I think these ownerships are actually fairly accurate on what we will see on Singletary and Pacheco. We're seeing anywhere from 50 to 60% on them both. It just makes it easy. They've both been getting, Singletary's been getting the volume like crazy at home here in a must-win game. It's playoffs now, so you see that even last week during the must-win for them against, I believe it was Indy, I can't remember now, but like that, there was the same type of usage, so we expect that again. And then Pacheco just at home, cold weather, all these factors, them being the favorite makes it obvious. I lean the Pacheco like everybody else does, but I think building some of these other guys in, the Fords, the Hunts, plays like that in. After that, though, it kind of drops off, Hoop. So one of the things I was looking at is like even in your Cleveland, Houston builds where you've got Stroud or Flacco and you're stacking up the game or whatever like that, oftentimes people are landing, or your lineups are probably landing on $6,800 range, and you're seeing it where you have to make that choice of HN or Mostert. And I think you can just drop down and go to a guy like Jerome Ford, who actually picks up the targets, leave all that money on the table. That's one of the best ways to get different in these setups is oftentimes it's like HN or Ford ends up being the difference of the same money as like Njoku at 56 and Schultz at 44. So I'm trying to look at it from that perspective, and sometimes just leaving that money on the table where most would have Njoku with paired up to try and get double points out of a guy like Flacco. I'm fine just leaving the money and going to Schultz. What's the difference? He has to beat one guy. It's a head-to-head now. I'm fine with that. It's the same thing at running back. Most would want to try and leverage this up, but you're not really leveraging that much. If he's 30 to 35%, so is Flacco, so is whatever else. I mean, these guys here are way more owned in these spots, looking like 50% on Cooper, around 48% for Njoku. So I'm looking for ways to get different like that. I think that's where you're trying to look for those mini 2v2 swapperoos, as I like to talk about them, where you can just find ways to get different. And then the chat was talking this morning. I guess it's interesting. Some Cleveland fans were coming in hot with, you can see some of these spots where he puts up 10. And I know you look at this slate and say that's not going to do it. And I kind of tend to agree. But what if it is 15? What if there is a spot where he gets in the box or something like that? So I do kind of like.
I mean, there's a path where that, again, I don't know how likely it is, and a lot of people are building teams like this, but there's a path where that second game is very, very nasty, and we see some really low fantasy scores, and 12 from a guy like Kareem Hunt could certainly be good enough. It's a 2-game slate. It's wide open in terms of what we see. So again, that's a very valid point, I think, on the slate. If you add in a third game, it's much less likely, which we'll talk about on tomorrow's show. I mean, adding just that one more game changes that dynamic quite a bit. But on this 2-game slate, a running back at 4,700 that gets 11 or 12 has a chance to be optimal. Is it likely? Probably not, but it can happen for sure.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because how does it happen, right? We just got to think out loud for a second here and talk with it. Is if Achane and Mostert both, if Mostert goes, which I assume he does, and both go, they can actually eat into each other, and maybe it is more of a passing game or something like that. So think of that in your builds, because we'll get there in a second when we talk about Tyreek, but that would be the way to do it. Get Tyreek in there instead of one of them. Hope they balance out. And here's a quick example. The very common build we started with and talked about afterwards, look at the ownership on these guys. And yes, they're giving Singletary 18 points in the projections. I tend to agree on the Pacheco side more than the Singletary one. So I just like it better at similar ownership and a little bit more money. But just to note, if you take out Singletary doing that, and it is someone like Hunt, that would probably flip the game script a little bit, which then you would have to kind of, again, you could play around with this. I know I'm adjusting the projections and not trusting them, but on a 2-game slate, I'm treating it more like a showdown slate where I'm thinking game script out loud. Well, now let me give them a 12, which is only a little bit more than those 9s and 10s that we've seen. But now let's take Singletary down to a 12. Well, now what's better? Because I have the exact same score from both of them for $1,000 less. That maybe that's the difference of going up from somebody at wide receiver, or maybe now I drop Njoku down to Schultz and I get the extra $1,000, plus I can take my Cooper up to Tyreek Hill. Boom. Now you've got yourself a very similar projected lineup if your script goes the way you're predicting it. I'm not saying it will, but in this scenario, I'm using the projection still to tell me that these two guys, Pacheco and Singletary, are going to be very popular together, and they're going to pop up in many lineup combinations, which then compounds when you get to another popular setup of what we talked about with your Strouds or your Flaccos. So just little ways to look to get different. I think that would be a key one. Anything else you've got to add at running back, Hoop? If not, we can move on to that Tyreek discussion and then the rest of what we got going on at wide receiver.
Yeah, good to talk some wide receiver here and what we can do at that position. Again, I mean, it's going to be 4 guys, I think, that soak up a majority of the ownership at this position, and it's the guys at the top of this list right here. It's Nico Collins, it's Rashee Rice, it's Amari Cooper, and it's Tyreek Hill. One guy from each team, essentially, that, in my eyes, gets majority of the ownership. Amari Cooper's looking to be very popular, and a lot of that is attributed to those monster, or at least the one monster game he had at the end of the season. Looks to have a good connection with Joe Flacco in the dome here. I think he's the one that gets the most ownership on the slate, and maybe rightfully so. But it is interesting; they're all right there. Those top 3 guys are $200 apart. Top 3 guys listed in terms of value: Collins, Rice, and Cooper. Collins obviously has had a great, coming off a monster game himself, great connection with Stroud. Rashee Rice is the clear number 1 in KC now in terms of the targets. I mean, 10, 9, 10, 9, 12, 6. He does really well. Seems like when Mahomes kind of breaks out of the pocket, he kind of gets to that open area, gets to that open spot, which you kind of talked about in these colder games. Maybe we see more of that from Mahomes. Rice clearly benefits from that. And then, Tyreek Hill is clearly the alpha wide receiver on the slate, but in the worst spot. Does his ownership start to get squeezed a little bit because everyone's now starting to realize that, this is a pretty bad spot for Miami? Tua hasn't been good in these situations. Something to monitor, because, man, Tyreek could still just break this slate no matter what. Like, it's one play and done for him. And I definitely want to be on him in a big way, regardless of this bad situation. Even if I think Miami gets their ass kicked in this game and doesn't do much offensively, right, Tyreek can clearly still get there. He has the potential to get 10 to 11 catches. If that happens, he's going to be on the optimal today. Still has the potential to get a 60-yard bomb. Still has the potential to get there in garbage time if they are getting their ass kicked. He has so many different ways to get there. And if he's the one that kind of comes down in terms of ownership, that's a spot that I'll kind of be locking in on. Again, if people go with that mindset that they want the pass catchers in the passing game in Cleveland and Houston, but not so much of it in Miami, KC. Again, I think that's a great way to flip this slate. Now, in terms of some of these secondary guys, if Waddle remains questionable, he's going to be lower owned than even anyone showing, because people will just take the safety in that first game and forget about Waddle. Could benefit from a trailing game script. I think he is a fine option, a guy to get some exposure to. You're just going to have to play some of these guys. I think Elijah Moore is kind of the go-to cheap option. People are really trusting Joe Flacco, and probably rightfully so. He's looked good. They're in the dome. 4K for Elijah Moore, and then David Bell. Like you said, we kind of got to wait and see on Tillman, but I'm assuming that Tillman is out. I haven't seen the most recent. He's out. Yeah, he's out. So we're good with David Bell at 3,500. He's coming off a solid game last week, but that was without Amari Cooper. So something to keep an eye on there. We need to see this news in Houston, and our projections right now are showing those guys as out. I happen to believe that they're going to be in. So what's going to happen when they're in? This Nico Collins projection is going to come way, way down. Like we haven't projected at a very high number. He's going to come down. Still going to show as a solid play, but Robert Woods and Noah Brown, I think they both play. So Robert Woods, limited practice on Wednesday, Thursday, and then Noah Brown, questionable, but like you said, he was a limited practice on Thursday. I mean, I personally think both those guys play. Right now, we're showing them as out, but again, they'll come in with moderate numbers. Nico Collins is going to come down from this 22 number he'll probably be in that Rice and Cooper range. He'll probably be a projection of like 18. I'm just going to punch it in and just see what it looks like. So, Tyreek in the cold.
Well, while you do that, I was going to answer. We got to alleviate our mind of these topics and conversations. Love my guy GK Pfeiffer, but man, always the questions of like, oh, I heard this in one game, and the sample sizes are nothing. It's like it says right here, one quick slant and runs for 90 yards, and it's gone. That goes out the window. If you want to lean on it after to feel better, if he doesn't have a good game, I did see the stat that he did bad in the one cold game or the 3 cold games that he played per year. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter on a slate like this ever.
He's the most dynamic wide receiver. He has endless outs in any sort of game script. We've seen it all. And again, if he's going to be the one that gets squeezed out of these wide receivers, like I'm in good weather, definitely does not help MVS catch. Probably catch the freaking football, which is wild. But I personally think Woods and Brown end up playing in this game. We will have this news though. This is the first game, and like I said, Nico Collins will probably come down to the Rashid Rice and Amari Cooper range, about somewhere in that 18 fantasy point range, which makes him, similar to those other guys. But I would definitely want Woods and Brown or whoever's in. If those guys are out, then some exposure to Mechie and Hutchinson potentially. And then the KC situation, obviously the most difficult to pinpoint. It's been the case all season long. I mean, it's been the case all season long with Casey. Like, who is it after Rashid Rice? It's not MVS. Like, I do agree with that point. The guy can't catch the ball. Justin Watson, 3,400, can definitely mix him in. Interesting point, though, our guy Gary Dunn brought up earlier with Hardman. 11 targets last week. He has some connection with Mahomes in the past. I think he's a very interesting play at 31. The Richie James of the world, the Kadarius Tonys of the world. So it's a situation that we talked about earlier. Can 10 be good enough on this slate at the wide receiver position? Maybe. I think it's in play. Tony is questionable, so that's another guy we'll have to keep an eye on. But in the Mahomes teams, definitely want some exposure to a variety of these guys, because really it could be anyone. I mean, they're going to switch some things up coming into the playoffs. I think there's going to be some guys on the field more than we've seen in the regular season. Could that be McCole Hardman? Could that be a guy like Richie James? Could they phase out MVS potentially? So it's a hard situation to read in terms of wide receivers. It's the most difficult one to read, but it's a situation that we could take advantage of, again, because people coming to this game, coming to the Chiefs side, are going to be more focused in on Pacheco and the defense. If we kind of get heavy on the passing game for the Chiefs, I think that's an interesting way to go. And one other thing I will bring up, with this Chiefs situation. And the reason I want to get high on the Chiefs is the Chiefs passing game is this Dolphins defense, man. When things go south, they give it up. They give up the points. And again, will KC, keep their foot on the pedal? I don't know. Maybe they don't, but man, like their defense just kind of gives up when they're getting their ass kicked, and they allow teams to add on points. We saw it with Baltimore a couple weeks ago. The KC spot intrigues me on the slate quite a bit. And then the Kelsey thing, a lot of people are asking about Kelsey. Has not been a good season for him. Could he turn it on?
We'll get to tight end anyway. We'll get to tight end in a second anyway. Let's circle back. There's a lot going on here because it's a deep position. So you talked through quite a bit. I want to see here some of these things that were brought up. A lot of the chat was talking about it. One quick one back to our guy. Shout out to Dwayne, says which we know the Flacco shell is going to be popular, but he said the Stroud side, I would rather that than risk Mahomes doing the bare minimum. The key is just, again, like he knows this and everybody does that watches this usually, but build your lineups towards what you're doing. If you're going to go with the Stroud side, then keep that in mind. You can still go Stroud with Pacheco because that's the idea that you're running it out with. So it goes the other way, though. If you're running it with Mahomes and you're saying he beats a Stroud and a Flacco, build that accordingly. And you can even mix Pacheco into those lineups as sort of those checkdowns and things. But I do think we see, just real quick, talking about this game in this Miami KC one, I think it's just running and short checkdowns. And so when someone says here, I forget who it was about those slants. Anyway, it was there. We just brought it up for somebody else. The slant, take it 90 yards. What if he doesn't take it 90 yards? But what if he gets 9 slants and catches all those and he has 9 for 120 and then doesn't get in the box? That's still pretty valuable versus what everyone's just automatically giving Nico Collins and Amari Cooper 20 points. That's just not how it works. So you have to keep that in mind as well. There's different constructions that could get you there. I think we could actually see, and I know it's hard to fit this in, but it's a completely different roster construction today, I said we'll get there, but I'll mention it now, is if you go Tyreek and Kelsey, that's 2 really different spots. Kelsey is less than Pacheco at a tight end position, a onesie position you have to use up. Again, they want to keep the game moving. They want to run the clock, but it also sucks just jamming your running back into these big dudes all game long to run the clock in the freezing cold weather. It sucks for everyone involved. So you will see a lot of, I think at least, check down, short passes, quick ones, and that's where you can get guys like Tyreek Hill and Kelsey racking up 6-7 catches in the first half alone. So you maybe go look at your single game parlays too, things like that. I think that's a way that you could see these teams attack it. As far as the cheap Kansas City wide receivers, because the chat was talking a bunch about them, and I'll go there quickly as well. Well, you have no idea. It's a complete roulette. There's like the news doesn't even like to talk about Tony anymore. Like you can't even find good articles on Tony's situation and stuff like that. You see it for everybody else, but it's hard to find. But if he's in, I think he's still interesting. But the thing is, Watson, Tony, Hardman's, all those guys, they are one play break the slate type guys. Like they are, you can get that early 10-yard touchdown or end around to a Tony just to get things cooking, and they start using him a little bit because he's in the mix. Watson is 160-yard touchdown catch. He's needed. Hardman, similar, like MBS, same type of way. Doesn't mean they'll catch it, and it sucks to play roulette, but it sucks less to play the roulette when it's on a 2-game slate, and it can make such a difference. Just like Showdown when I'm talking about playing Mahomes. That's why I don't like doing it on the main slate when we have 13 games and a million other options we can use. But in a 2-game slate, to me, it makes perfect sense. Do you have something else there, Hoop? I'm just going to find this other comment.
No, that makes total sense, and I'm with you on that. I think the Tyreek talking point is very important on the slate. Just so many different ways to get there. Like you said, he doesn't need the 90-yarder to get to the house. If he goes out and gets 9-10 catches, he's going to be the guy you need at the wide receiver position today. And
he is more expensive, absolutely. But think about that too.
That's why his ownership's going to come down a little bit from those other guys. A lot of people are going to say, all right, 8,700 for Tyreek and probably one of the worst spots for him this season, or I just save $2,000 and go to Cooper, Collins, Rice. A lot of people go that route. Now you can obviously play him with those guys as well, but if making that final decision, people are going to take the 2,000 savings and upgrade somewhere.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways you could do it. Like again, Cooper to be beat by Elijah Moore is not crazy. Boom, just found how much? $2,800. We're still heavy on this Cleveland-Houston game. We like games in the dome versus outside, but we're not saying commit a full-on game stack to this if you don't want to. Like you could set it up differently. Like I'm saying, just showing a couple options here. People brought up Hunt earlier. Singletary, Hunt, Elijah Moore, 4.6K. You throw in Kansas City D because who cares about having Tyreek Hill against it? What if it is just 9 catches for for 120, like we talked about, that wouldn't hurt, or vice versa. The other way, I'm not going to fill up the whole thing, but you can definitely still get a Stroud or a Flacco in here, no problem, and have a good lineup. And this is way different than what other people have at way less. This is at 268% ownership. It would obviously go up over 300, but look what most people are doing. Bing, bing.
Yeah.
Bing, bing. They're almost at 300. They're over 200 on 4 plays. You know what I mean? Like
Here's another very interesting dynamic. So I just went in and using the solver ran 150 teams. The only rule I said is I want my QB stack. Didn't change anything else. 3% Tyreek. 3%. So people that come in and just blindly run teams, and it'd be the same thing with other projection sites as well. People that just come in and blindly run teams, they're not going to get a lot of Tyreek, and that makes me believe that his ownership could potentially be lower than we're even anticipating today.
Yeah, I think it's as well too. Yesterday, or I guess it was 2 days ago when I did the show with Mayo, and we talked about it. It actually looked like, because of some of the injury statuses and things like that, that it was going to be much easier to get to Tyreek. But it's clear now with the weather narrative and everything else like that, Tyreek's ownership has come down quite a bit. It was tracking for almost 50 to 55% the other day. Now I think this 30%, 32 range does look a lot more accurate. And again, like Jake says, this is a way. If I had Tua, I would want Tyreek for the most part. But I think, again, people got to realize that Tyreek can just get there. Like Tyreek can just be the guy that's needed. It's likely meaning that, one of Nico or Amari don't get there, but it's not to say you can't build something like this. I mean, you still have the money. We still have some of those cheap running backs we talked about. We definitely have cheap tight ends that we didn't get there. We're about to go there in a second, but there is ways to get this as your core starting point for wide receiver. But it's just, I think there's other options, and we talked about some of them. Hutchinson has still got the targets. Mechie could be involved. I already went through all the KC guys, and then just the difference. And as far as the chat talking about earlier, I don't like Tyreek with Waddle. Probably not in. Waddle, again, another guy, practiced on Thursday. Doesn't mean he'll play, but has been in the mix already. I actually expect Waddle, Mostert, both to play. That's just my thoughts as of right now. But I think that, and I think Brown and Woods both play. So I think we're going to get all the options. And then that's where it gets a little bit different from there. I would choose Bell over Goodwin if I was going down there. For the wide receivers for the Chiefs, I would probably like Watson, Tony, and Hardman the most. I would probably still take a shot on MBS over Richie James, though, but we'll see what comes out with the Tony one is what I don't know. Like, I couldn't find much news on Kadarius Toney. It's like they don't really talk about him anymore. No. He's just like a secret. So maybe they're trying to keep him a secret, and he's the play. But 3,200 for him, he could be okay as well.
Yeah.
Move on to tight end, Hoop. Let's go breeze through this one. We know where everybody's going. The ownership is about 40%, somewhere in the range of 35 to 50 on Schultz, Kelsey, and Njoku. Then I think people are comfortable taking someone like a Brevin Jordan or a Noah Gray. After that, it becomes like a Smythe, Bryant, Akins. What are you doing here at the tight end position?
Yeah, I mean, it's like those three for sure. I mean, Schultz, Kelsey, Njoku. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like the running back position a little bit, but where there's a clear top tier and then there's a pretty big fallout. And the top three, I think, get similar ownership. Njoku, Kelsey, Schultz. How do we take advantage of the situation? I mean, I'll be honest, it's probably pretty difficult. I mean, the one thing would maybe be Kelsey. Like if you just buy in again to the KC passing attack, the short stuff, if we think it's short passes, that clearly benefits Kelsey. We've seen a lot of times they'll get it to him behind the line of scrimmage and he'll just bulldoze his ass for like 15 yards. Can see that a couple times today. Does he somehow transform into Kelsey of last season for the playoffs? I think that's in the realm of not fully like what he was doing last season, but like better than what we saw in the regular season. I think that's definitely in the realm of possibilities. So like he's a guy that maybe I just try to get overweight on, and that's how I attack this position. But Njoku, Schultz, Kelsey, I mean, it's those three. One guy though that I am going to get exposure to is Smythe. Been getting solid number of targets each week. If Waddle is out, I think he gets a boost. If Waddle's dinged up, he's got to look at it. And you look at it, the targets have just been up since week 14, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3. And he's converting them all into catches. Three targets, 3 catches, 3 targets, 3 catches, 5 targets, 5 catches, 4, 4. And the yardage has been pretty good. A couple games over 50. So you can buy, if he somehow flukes into the end zone at 3K, like it's a really good play. So Smythe is a guy that I'll definitely make sure I have some exposure to. Brevin Jordan, like you said, 2,500 full punt. It's one of those situations again, like, even if he comes out and does nothing, 2,500, it might not kill you in like single entry stuff. So pretty clear position with those three up top. Njoku, Kelsey, Schultz, Smythe, and Jordan would be the cheapies. I actually prefer Smythe over Jordan for $500 more.
So is that your tight end whisperer play of the day?
Smythe. Yep. People are asking for it. It's going to be Smythe. Smythe is the tight end, and it's rare to find one on a 2-game slate, but I think we're able to do so. I like the Smythe stuff. I mean, if you pair any of those up with a TD, you'll definitely take it. I mean, the 8.4 goes to 14, 16. Smythe is the play today at tight end. Okay, let me take that back. Smythe is not the play today at tight end. He is the random tight end call of the day, and a guy that I want to make sure I get some exposure to. But yeah, Smythe's the guy.
You can't triple stamp a double stamp. You can't take that. No take backsies. You can't do that. You said he was the tight end play of the day. So we need some Smythe in our life. That's what we're going to do here. A big pass rush, too. I forgot, too, also. I know KC obviously expected to win here, and you expected, I expected, everyone does. But I believe Chris Jones, who, remember, he sat out at the start of the season, still goes up in the booth and watches his team play. He's like, yeah, pay me. I'll be up here until you pay me, and then I'll go down on the field. They gave him the 1-year deal. This could be his last game, right? He's going to be out there rushing like crazy. The best ever combine video of all time, whatever, to run in the 40 is him. I still laugh at it every single time. He goes out, he falls on his unit, and then gets up and says, oh, man, my unit fell out. Like, he get up and realizes he landed on it. It's hilarious. The guy is a beast, though, out there on the field. So with that pass rush coming at him, you got to think, just go back to that Baltimore game. They got a rush of their own, 3 for 54, still dropped 8.4 for 3K. That's not bad. It's like I said, you pick up something there. I think this double tight end combo will be really popular, though, because just look at this build I drew up. I'm not going to fill it out, but Flacco, Cooper, Njoku, you get your Collins and Schultz, you throw in a Singletary or somebody else, who cares? Pacheco, I put in there. Even if you say, I'm going to go with Achane to be different, you still have 3.5K. That puts you, where this puts you. I mean, everybody has this build. Everybody has this build deciding between Achane or Mostert, because when I put in the D that matches and it lands on the other guy that Flacco throws to, you think you got the nuts? Maybe it is. You're chopping it with a billion people. So that's just the point of these types of lineups. You have to look to get a little bit different somewhere. Just somewhere get a little bit unique if you're trying to win $1 million up top on a Saturday. Anything else you got with that?
No, that's a really good point. I mean, that's the very common build that people are going to go to. I mean, you just got to the key to these 2-game slates. You always talk about your 2v2 swapperoo type stuff. That's the key to these 2-game slates, because every build people are going to be on all these sort of builds. Like, there's just no way to get super unique. You got to find the common build and find those little pivots and 2v2 swapperoos.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. And we do this all the time. People wonder, again, about SHIPIT Nation when they ask about it. We're new still. We're only 8 months in, and people bring it up. Lots of sites have projections. Lots of sites have ownership. Lots of sites have player pools and core plays and reports and all these things and rankings and et cetera. And we do as well at a much better, much more affordable price. But the key to it all is what we're actually talking about in the Discord, what we're actually talking about in the Slate plan, what we're talking about on these free shows is not what Tyreek Hill's 3-game sample size in cold weather games looks like, so that's why he gets there today. We're talking about what really matters. What are the people in the exact same tournaments we're trying to play and win doing, and what can we do to beat them to find our way to the top? Every site has people like Hoop, myself, and the rest of our team that have had success with DFS. The resume is already there. The trophies are on the shelf. The belts, people have them. Everything is out there. The money's been won. That's not what you're looking to get over to a site and join a community for. You're looking to join a place where you can actually find your home, build your own process. There's already credibility, reputation there. The price is affordable, so you can pay less for content, play more contests, stop messing around with all these expensive sites, all this other stuff there. Get the data, but then find out how to use it to build your process, win, make it repeatable, and find your way to the top of your own stuff. That's what our goal is here. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I can't beat the price tag. I mean, it's the value that we offer is something that the industry does not like. I'm going to tell you that much, because they're trying to get the big boy price tags. They want to, and again, I always say it, and this is part of our little marketing thing, but it's the honest to God truth. We could charge a hell of a lot more for this content. It would sell, and I truly mean that. And someone asked me the other day, "You've had a ton of success at DFS. Why do you like doing this?" 2 reasons. I like doing this because what we've built here is not just, hey, this is what I'm playing today, you should go play this. We're trying to make you a better player long term. That's why we do the education stuff that everyone talks about. Oh, we're going to do these courses and videos, blah, blah, blah. They always say it, never do it. What did we do? We said we're going to do it. We absolutely did it. So number one, I want to make people better. Number two, people that are interested in paying for content, we want to offer you a price tag that is better than everyone else in the industry. And it goes back to that same point that we talked about. So you can play more and pay less to us. Those are two core principal values for our company that will never change. It's a commitment we've made to each other, myself and Tambo, to our current members and any future members, that commitment. And that is something that will never change no matter what happens with SHIPIT Nation moving forward.
Yeah, and little thing with, like you said, with the course, everyone talks about, we recorded and edited. This is a 4-hour course for NFL that we recorded over 3 days, took it down, edited so it could make it easy for you to use and go about it. We have for NBA. If you're looking to get in the NBA streets, we have very good projections. They're good and different. Everybody else using the two other main competitors that have great NBA projections, I don't doubt that. I never say anything bad against their projections. I'm saying you can get really good projections that are different and pay a much more affordable price. That's the whole point. We charge $539 using code PGA10 for our entire site for a year, including everything we continue to add and improve on. If we add NASCAR, if we add college football, if we add other sports, you're going to get those for free, not in other packages. Those are going to come with it. And that's the key, where you're paying $500 for just golf at other sites makes absolutely no sense at all. It's not a shot at them. It's just we've made it more affordable. But look at this, like PGA example. So PGA has a completely different live final. It's got a 3-round playdown. After you qualify, well, our guy Jordan Newens used the projections and everything, took the course. He said he took the course 2 times. He went and used it, won himself a seat on week 1, and now he doesn't have to question himself. He has all the time in the world to think about how he's going to attack it when he gets there, because we actually ran a course on how to play just that specifically for a completely different style of live final. We're not talking about your everyday stuff. It's innovation versus what the rest of the industry is doing. That's enough on that hoop. Defenses to round it out, and then we'll get out of here. It's spread out at defense. I know people are pairing the KCD up with Pacheco a ton. I know people are playing the Dolphins because they're just the cheapest. I know people are playing one of those other two and fine using them against the quarterback. But do you have any thoughts at all on defense in general before we get out of here?
Chiefs, I think, end up the highest owned. What's the price? Yeah, I mean, they're 2,900. They're a little bit. I mean, they priced all these. I don't know. I really don't have any take. I'm going to run the optimizer. As long as I don't get anything off the wall where I'm getting like 80% of one of these, I'll just let it run. Like, I just have no preference. If I was obviously going to say this is the highest scoring defense on the slate, I think it's the Chiefs. I think it's a really good spot for the Chiefs at home in the weather. Someone posted in here, which definitely disagree with that. The only advantage the Chiefs have today is Andy Reid. Like, the weather's a massive advantage for the Chiefs. There's no two ways about it. I mean, that's a big advantage. That's why you're seeing this total spread now pushed up to like 5. It's a big advantage for the Chiefs. But in terms of defensive stuff, I don't care. Like, just give me whoever and let's roll.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too, is just looking at it from that perspective. You can just set it up that way, but you can also play against the quarterback a bunch today. Like, the Texans D could take out Flacco, and Flacco could still crush, because him and his paired guys up are all pretty cheap. Like, if you have Flacco with Elijah Moore and Njoku, and they both get a touchdown, that's going to be massive for Flacco. It's going to be massive for those two dudes at their price tags and their positions. But then it's also a chance where, what if there's a pick 6 from Cleveland and it's the only one on the slate, and then there's some sacks that they still have or things like that. That can still come through. So defense against the quarterback is great today. I think it makes perfect sense. Pairing your defense up, but what if instead of Pacheco and Chiefs, like everybody else, you've got Ford and Browns, or you've got Mostert and the Dolphins? You said it, Hoop. Again, we did this, I think it was last week, where Najee Harris with the Steelers ended up being just a natural pairing. You needed both, and it was a spot where people weren't sure they were going to come through. Same thing here. If you think Miami can come through, or if you want a way to flip your build and get different, Pacheco with the Chiefs is, what is it here? 40,700 remaining, 27 points and 92. If you go Dolphins and Mostert, 40,500. It's a much lower projection. But again, in that script, you're not going to have Mostert at 9.91. And I'll go to more on that in a second. Look at the drop in the ownership. It's almost half. Wooly right here. Awesome comment. We say this all the time. Projections, Hoop, you talked about this for golf. It's a piece of the puzzle. And as you guys can see on a 2-game slate, especially showdown slates, all that, the projections sometimes are almost better served as a way to actually go out and see what is the field doing and where are they going to land and what can I do to combat that. And in this case, this is a prime example. Well, this is about the same money for this combo, way less ownership, but it is less projection. Well, in this same example, I don't think Pacheco is going to be the guy. It's going to end up being Mostert. So you got to flip some of his points to Mostert. The thing that stays the same is the salary usage, and the ownership stays the same. But now this projection will change and go up, where the Pacheco version will go down. So using that to find this stuff out, it still makes perfect sense. And it's all that has to happen is Miami has to be in this game. I know we don't think that's going to be the case, and we've made arguments why they won't be, but in your builds, they can be. And in the game tonight, they definitely can be. So I think that's how you have to look at it, just to get a little bit different. If you're doing something like Mostert, don't be scared to pair him up with that defense there in Miami and get different that way. This is what it's all about. Jason says it. I've learned so much from a game theory, roster construction perspective from SHIPIT. Wish I had caught on earlier. Definitely in for next football season. We'll definitely be in for next football season with you as well. Hoop, final thoughts on this slate before we get out of here, man. We just hit the 1 hour mark.
Yeah, nothing beats NFL playoffs. It all starts this afternoon. Looking forward to it. We'll have obviously content for all these slates moving forward. Very excited for that. Very excited to see those SHIPIT Nation logos at the top of the leaderboard, which is going to be the case today. So get on over, check it out, get in our Discord, ask whatever questions you have. Let's start these NFL playoffs out on the right foot here.
Yeah, and if you want to get in, you can use PGA 10. It's not just on the PGA combos that you can use that on. You can use it on the $69 monthly to get all access, drop it down to $62. You want to get in based on everything you heard today for the 6-month or the annual. Lots are doing that, locking in the price. I can tell you, again, everyone says I tease everything. It's because sometimes there's timelines. We can't just say what is exactly happening and when. We'll announce it when we do. But we've said that about everything else, and it's all come true. We've come out with a ton of other stuff and continue to improve and add on as we went along. There is big things coming in 2024. Everybody says that. It's not just that. You'll see some of them sooner than later, but keep that in mind. If you want to lock in a price, $539 for the entire season works out to like $41 or $44 a month for everything, including the sports that we add on, anybody else we bring over, all these other things that we do. So a lot of exciting things going on at the Nation. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. For Hoop, I'm ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it.